Let's roll. This is Countercharge, your podcast for ranks, flanks, and kings of war. Join your hosts as they delve into the world of Panithor and bring you worldwide coverage of all things Kings of War.
Welcome to Countercharge. I'm Alex McWilliam.
I'm Jeremy Duvall.
And I'm Rob Fnuff, and we're back again with another Community Spotlight. Jeremy, this has been paying dividends. On the fireside, we just said, hey, new players that want to chat with us on the podcast, reach out. We'd love to get your new player perspective. And it's been a windfall, and tonight's no exception. We got Alex McWilliam joining us all the way from the UK. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out for us, guys. We're always excited to get new voices on the show, get longtime listeners or short-time listeners if you're new to the Countercharge family. And I think, Rob, we've also wanted to sort of, one of the goals of 4th edition has been opening up the game to newer players. So I think having that new player voice is so important and so crucial. If you ain't living, you're dying, as they say in Shawshank Redemption. And I think that's the same thing with game systems. If you ain't growing, these people come and go. We were just talking about this before we recorded, right, Rob? You have jobs, you have promotions, you have new kids, you have family. That players are always coming in and out. So if we're not growing our community or thinking about how we add new voices, new thinking to that, I think it's tough, especially in our game system, right, Rob? It's a niche of a niche within a niche.
Absolutely. And it's a game that it is a niche game, but it's also a time-consuming game. So anything we can do to make it more accessible to the people that have all those responsibilities, have all those time commitments, so that it doesn't have to be played like a lifestyle game, I think is a windfall for us.
For sure. So, Alex, why don't you first, as you're introducing yourself to our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from, what you do in your day job, just a little bit, maybe how you came to gaming, how did you find miniature gaming in your life? Take us a little bit through sort of your backstory.
Yeah, so I'm based in Basingstoke, which is in Hampshire, one of the home counties in the UK. My day job is a bit all over the place, a bit of teaching, a bit of acting, a bit of consulting, a bit of everything, really. And I think I got into gaming the same way everyone else has. Started with Warhammer, started actually with 40k, and then moved over to fantasy in those teenage years. And then actually didn't really play it for my early 20s. And it was only, I would say, around 7 years ago, started playing Horus Heresy 30k as my friends were like, hey, we're playing this again. Do you want to play? And I miss playing with them. So I was like, let's play. And then a couple of years ago, my friends started playing Kings of War. So my group of friends are the Smith brothers, which I think have been known in the UK. So Chris, Andy, Michael, and a guy called Matthew Rose. We used to play all the time with fantasy, Warhammer, all of those things. And a few years ago, they all started playing Kings of War. And I was like, I'm not gonna play another game. I've got no time for this. And then actually I started missing it. I missed playing with them. And Matt did a great thing. He went, here's the rule book, open it up, look at all the armies and see which one you like the look of the most, and then use that as an army. And I went, okay, fine. So I had a look at the rule book and flicked through it all and went, Northern Alliance, they look fun. They look like a fun bunch to play because they're all sort of Nordic and there's ice and there's Vikings and I'm Scottish technically as well. So it's like, roots back home. And it was Chris, very kindly, he'd won I think like a starter kit or something in Northern Alliance. He was never going to play it. And he said, look, if you're going to play Kings of War, look, have this and that will start you off. And it started me off. And then it went down a route of let's find loads of models. Let's get back to painting. Let's get back to building. I've forgotten how hard it is to glue things together. And then they went, how about doing some tournaments, Alex? You might like playing tournaments. And I've never done tournaments before, ever. I've never done any tournament play in any of the other previous wargaming. I thought, okay, let's try it. And the community was great. It's such a loving, caring, nice community. And I played a few tournaments down south. 2 of the tournaments I played, my first opponent was Chris Lynch.
What a way to go! Come into the tournament scene.
So I learned a lot of things very early on about what not to do and how things, how not to deploy. And they were great. And there was Danny Graves, I was playing as well, and John Guns. Basically, a lot of people who were on the UK Masters. They were kind of my baptism by fire. Was my tournament play, and it brought me back to my teenage years where it was just fun to play and just have some fun, play some games, and just move little people around and try and kill each other.
Did you have any assumptions when you went to play your first tournament that you thought this is what a tournament's going to be like? And did you have any trepidation, or the people that were getting you into it were cool and you just thought, you know what, if they're into it, it's going to be fine?
Because I was quite new, the rules I was still learning the rules. And so a lot of things I went, oh, that's how that works. Oh, okay, I've misplayed that, or I've completely forgotten about that. Because with other games, it's mainly about measuring. That's all you really need to know about tactics. Well, not only about tactics, but with Kings of War, it was really about those angles. And a lot of the early play was, right, I've opened up a flank. Okay, now this unit's going to be dead. So there was a bit of apprehension there, just about being confident in my own rule set. And I even went to Clash, which was which
awesome.
was yeah. So I went to Clash, and that was really intense. Again, because there's multicultural things as well. So I was trying to communicate with a French, a German, a Spanish, while trying to learn the rules at the same time. So there was a bit of apprehension. But if I needed help with a rule, my opponent would say, by the way, you can't do that. Or actually, if you want to, you can reposition that and that will happen, which was very kind of them. So they were really nice from a new player point of view.
So everything in your life, you just jump into the deep end, right? You don't do anything half measure?
By day, I do a lot of improv. I do a lot of let's just try it and see what happens. And I thought, what's the worst that could happen? Obviously, I can get a bit moody if I'm like, great, everything's dead. I think I played an opponent and they had lots of shooting. And I think my army just took ages to get even close to them. And it was all dead by turn 4. And I went, okay.
Yeah. We have all been on that side of the table.
Yeah, I'm curious, Alex, sort of one thing about Kings of War that stands out, I guess it's an elevator pitch or a tagline why you may want to play it that we love. And I'm curious if this is something we've developed maybe as the community have been into it, or if as a newer player this resonated with you, is this concept of easy to learn but difficult to master as an element of Kings. Was that your sense when you first started playing Kings? Does that idea resonate with you, or how do you feel sort of about getting into it as a game system?
I found it because after playing Warhammer 40k, 30k, they're all very complicated at times with loads of different rules, and each army has a slightly different rule. Whereas Kings, I found quite easy to just get the basics. And yeah, I agree, hard to master, especially learning all those intricate that rule and that rule. But a majority of the rules were, okay, that does that, and every army has that. Whereas only those little rules that I went, because I haven't played against that army, for example. Like I still haven't played against Basilians. I still haven't played against Kings of Men. I played a lot of Ogres and a lot of Empire of Dust, so I know how they tend to work. But a lot of the other armies is still learning how they all work, and I think that's how you end up mastering them.
Well, that's interesting because 4th edition is perfect for you then, right? There's 9 less armies, and the rules are all new. So we're all in it at the same point.
Exactly, easy.
So do you have like a local club you're playing at? Are you playing at game stores or other people's houses? Do you have like a weekly game going on, or sort of what's your local gaming scene like now with Kings and 4th coming out? What's that been like?
So I don't actually have a local gaming club as such, because I moved to Basingstoke around 18 months ago. There's not really a Kings environment here. But luckily, Chris, Matt, and all of those people live in Reading, where I used to live. And when we want to, we can play a bit sporadic. But actually, most of my gameplay has been at tournaments, actually, this year. I think pretty much all of them. I think I've had 3 or 4 games which were practice games how to play. And the rest were all tournaments, which...
Just get right into the swimming pool. Jump in,
exactly.
Learn to swim.
Especially when an army goes, this is an army, and I go, I've never played this army. Let's see how this works.
I was just looking, though. Reading's not too far from Basingstoke, right? How far of a drive is that?
It's around 40 minutes, which I realise for Americans, that's like nothing. That's like down the road. And for UK people, if anything's 2 hours, we're like, oh, it's so long away. But I know for you guys, you're like, oh, that's like, I'll do that every day.
That's how long it takes me to get to work in my morning commute. It's 2 hours.
Too. Right. Well, 45 minutes, not 2 hours. Yeah.
What about local game store? I know. Do you have a local game store? Are they carrying any Mantic product? Or talk a little bit about your local game store scene. What that's like?
Yeah, there's a couple of game stores in Basingstoke, which is great. But actually, it's very interesting because I don't know if it's the local one here, but they don't actually stock any Mantic or any Kings of War or products. They've got the classic, Warhammer and everything, but not Kings of War, which is, I don't know if they just don't have anyone doing it or anything like that. So it's been kind of either tournaments or bring and buys or various online retailers to purchase the goods. But they're more based on those card games, Magic, Lorcana, Pokemon. Those are kind of where they tend to get their things. But it is great. If I wanted to, I could hire out a table and we could play if we wanted to, which is nice.
So when you're looking at Mantic sort of as like a new player, like you have some experience with GW, right? You've kind of been involved in these other spheres of gaming. Is there anything that you like how Mantic runs their games and stuff? Is there some other stuff that maybe it's a little frustrating as a new player? What has sort of been your new player experience kind of within the Mantic ecosystem? What's that been like for you?
The best thing I've found is the rules. I found they're the simplest things to understand, that basic of. I actually really like the fact that I just do all the rolling. If it's my turn, I do all the rolling. Whereas with GW, like I roll and then you've got a save, then you've got another save, you've got another save. It takes a long time. Whereas actually, you can get a game in well within 2 hours, sometimes an hour if it's very one-sided. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I know some people love, some people hate it, the companion. I found it really easy, especially from a list building point of view of going, okay, cool. It's legal, great. I know how to do it. Or it's not legal. I need this. I need that. So I found that really useful. And I can quickly find the rules I want to very easily. Whereas again, when we played before, it is get the big book, flick to one page. Where's that rule? Flick to another page. What does that rule mean? Whereas everything is really simple. And there's not 50 or 60 rules for each individual faction, which I think I'd really like.
Yeah, that's one of the hallmarks, I think, of Mantic games in general is that they're easy to get into, right? They don't overly complicate everything right from the beginning. Yeah, they get more complex as you get more experience. Maybe in the case of Kings of War, more of the complexity is, there's a bunch of different armies, right? But the rules themselves per se aren't too much. What other games? I mean, you talked about GW playing Horus Heresy and those ilk, and obviously Kings of War. Is there any other games on your radar?
Miniature games. Actually, I haven't tried any of the other Mantic ones. I'm curious to try those ones because a few people have been playing them. We've been playing a game called Trench Crusade. Trench
Crusade, yeah, big giant 3D printable thing off Kickstarter. So Thomas Prininen, right? Awesome Tomas Prininen from GW days, right? He was, I believe, 6th edition Warhammer.
Yeah, so we started playing that because again, it's a nice game. It's quite quick and going. So we had essentially a practice game over the weekend with Andy and Chris Smith, and we were like, oh, this is how the game works. And that was quite nice to play quite simply. And then I'm a big board game fan. I love. We sort of commented you got all your board games. Mine are downstairs.
What are some of the ones that you love getting to the table?
Okay, so I think Catan is a classic one. We like one called Makikora, which is a really good fun game. Monopoly Deal is a nice, easy one. Game of Thrones, or A Ticket to Ride.
Classic.
Yeah. Axis and Allies was one I think we spoke about. It's a long game. I really want to play it. It's just you need to hold an entire weekend out if you want to play Axis and Allies Global.
In terms of Kings of War, you got into it like 6 months ago, so you're relatively new, or a little longer than that?
I would say so. I got my first set around Christmas last year. I started building it in the new year, and then I played my first tournament in around March, April. I think it's King of Hearts, which is based. It's around an hour from me, which is again my first tournament, and so it's around 9 months of playing, and I think maybe 30 or 40 games. I think if that, I think.
And would you consider yourself more of a gamer or more of a hobby person? Like, where do you fall on that spectrum? Not that they're mutually exclusive, but
So, so I enjoy gaming more, hobbying. Some things I like, and like I've really enjoyed basing. So my Northern Alliance, I've played around with like snow and resin, and there was I found a YouTube tutorial of a guy doing it, and I went, great, I'm just going to copy this tutorial and make my sort of resin ice bases, which are really lovely. Some of the painting, because I haven't painted in quite a long time, I found quite frustrating, but I used contrast paints for the first time, and actually that did speed up a lot of things, and some things were very quick to paint, like ice elementals, really quick. White, a bit of blue, contrast, done, sorted, highlight, done. The other stuff, the one thing, I got it 3D, Andy very kindly 3D printed me a frost giant, lovely model, hated painting it because it had all of those straps and all of those little individual bits. But because
it's also 9 inches tall too,
yeah,
which doesn't help either. Yeah.
It's a lovely model and I love it, but it was the one thing I went, I've got more straps to do. Yeah. And it was a long process.
Now, you don't 3D print yourself, but your club mates do. Is that something long term you might get into?
I thought about this, and I think I don't know how much I would print. And luckily, Andy's got a printer. And I'm like, well, actually, get him some resin, and he'll print us some stuff, and which is quite nice. And I think if I printed loads, I'd probably get one, but I'm going to stay away from getting one.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Kings of War, though, because I'm really interested to hear your perspective on the state of the game coming into 4th. Obviously, you kind of came into the game at the tail end of 3.5. And, because you're going to have a different perspective than somebody that maybe started with 3.5 in 2022 or 2021. So just kind of give me a sense of, what did you think about Kings of War? Was there anything that you were like, this feels a little long in the tooth, or it was all new to you, so it just all felt great?
It was all new to me. I'd been playing wargaming. I played ranks and flanks with GW, so I kind of knew some of that, how it was. And I was quite open. And I think the only thing I found was playing lots of new armies. I had lots of new individual rules to play. And I went, my army does this, and this is a special army rule. And I went, okay, right. Like I learned the hard way about surging. And I went, yes. Great. So I've now learned you can fly and then pivot and then go into, yes, okay, now I've learned that. But then I learned from that mistake in the first one. So I was quite open. I was like, actually, this seems quite a good fun one. I didn't like some of the lists I played, which I think everyone, against 2 or 3 dragons, you're like, I'm going to die.
Was that Chris Lynch?
No, do you know what? I'm trying to think. So we played, this is interesting. So I played Chris Lynch twice, one at an ambush event, which was actually really good. It was run by Matthew Rose, and it was a 2,000 point ambush tournament, which is really great fun because there are no hordes. And I think basically I just got beaten up very easily in the first round with Chris. But then the other tournament was it was one in High Wycombe. I can't remember the name actually. It's not it's not War of the Roses. It was another game, and actually he beat me, just as you do, with a load of, I think it was that might have been a load of snow trolls. But that tournament, I think I came 4th, maybe 5th, out of like 10 people. So I was like going, it's quite nice ending that tournament.
Absolutely. Well, you play Northern Alliance. What units are you liking in that list? In the context of 3.5, we'll talk about 4th in a minute, but in terms of 3.5, what are you putting in that Northern Alliance list?
Yeah, so I really loved Half Elf Berserkers. I loved giving them Talar's house standard, and I was like, right, they've now got like dash 18, they've got 20, 25 attacks, and then you Bane Giant them, and they're running off a hill, and they're now starting to beat things up. Classic is the Naiads, because they just stay there and tank things. And for a few tournaments, I was playing like Ice Elementals with Serakina as well, and I was kind of having like a bubble of regen and Radiance of Life and things. And I did start enjoy. Actually, no, I enjoyed having Krim because actually I thought he would be good. But MVP was a Cavern Dweller. That Cavern Dweller for most tournaments was doing so much damage because it was Chilling Presence and it had Vicious. So it was like hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, with rerolls. It was just MVP.
Life Leech 3, I think, as well.
Yeah, Life Leech 3. So it was just
hard to kill.
It was just staying there, and often it was anything trying to kill it. We'd be like, well, we're just hitting each other, and it's not going to move. So actually, I know some people go, oh, Cavern Dweller, not great, but actually, overall, it was better than Hrim, just because Hrim used to roll like a 1 or something like that for his D6 attacks. I was like, right, he's trying to hit things, whereas the Cavern Dweller was like 6. So it's just destroying units.
Yeah, I've been working on Northern Alliance for a long time, though. My ice elementals took me 10 months of 20.
You got 2 done, is that right, Jeremy?
No, they're done basically, but I need to tweak little bases. But I think it's a great faction. What I love about Northern Alliance, it has a little bit of everything. So it is, and just the very nature of it is cool. Like you can have dwarves, you can have elves. I also love half elf berserkers. And I think they're cool, even better in 4th edition. But I'm right there with you. I think Northern Alliance is a really cool faction. Did you, in your sort of experience, did you mess with any other factions? Were you kind of always with Northern Alliance?
Yeah, no. So I sort of stuck with that, and I thought, why don't I get good at this one faction, and then if I get really good at it, then I can branch out. I'm trying to think about other factions that potentially caught my eye, like Abyssal Dwarfs. I was like, oh, that could be an interesting one to play with. But no other army really caught my eye and went, oh, I'd love to build this army. I'd love to play with it. But, never say never, 4th edition, who knows what might happen.
Well, I think he's doing a good strategy in that when you're new to the game, I would say pick the army that looks coolest to you, that you're most like into theme, and then just play that and just play. Because one of the great things about Kings is almost every army you can get a list or a build that can be competitive. So, find the one that gets your creative juices flowing. Would that be your sort of suggestion, Rob, too, to newer players too? It's like, what army should I play? Pick one that you like the look of.
An episode coming out with Adam, and he basically makes the comment, pick the army that you like the look of the best, because if you don't, you'll hate yourself. You got to paint these models and stuff, right? You got to live with it. So I'm always thinking about the aesthetic and what do I want to paint and what do I want to hobby. And secondary to that would be how they are, is the list interesting? I'm looking at models first. Because models, maybe you could speak to this as a newer player, like you've played a lot of different games. For me, models get me to the game, right? They bring me there because that's what I can see on the table. And then once I'm there, I'll stay there if the game's cool and the people are awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because before I started playing, I went to Warfare, which is the tournament run by the Smiths, because there's lots of other things you can do there and purchase. And I walked around the Kings of War tournament in lunchtime and looked at all the armies. And I remember one of them was a Northern Alliance army and went, oh yeah, that one does look so cool. And that just sparked my interest to go, yeah, let's do it. I really want to play. But definitely, because a lot of people I know go, oh, this model's not any great. And I go, yeah, but it's such a cool looking model. Like the Cavern Dweller, I think it looks so cool. And actually, I'm quite proud of the painting of it. And I go, I want to use that as much as I can because it just looks cool.
And that's the important thing, right? At the end of the day, you want your army to look cool, right? That's it. It's always the rule of cool, Jeremy.
Yeah.
100%. And I think that I like your example of the miniatures. I think in a game system gets your foot in the door, right? Am I even going to open this door up and see what's inside? That's often, I think, the aesthetic look or the vibe for me. And then whether or not I want to move in, that often is the rules of the game. Like, I know I fail that. Again, we always say there's a game for everyone and everyone for a game, but every time I want to kind of like dangle my toes back into the GW world because their models are so awesome, I always start looking at the rules and like doing a little research on what everyone's doing, and I'm like, oh god, no, I'm just curious as like, does that is there? That's one of the things I love about Mantic games is there are a little bit more accessible. Did you feel that when you were starting to go to tournaments and stuff? Did it feel like overwhelming, the game system, or was it feel pretty accessible?
It was definitely more accessible than, because we only played casual DW games, never played a tournament, and that was still complicated and took multiple hours, and most of those hours were, what is that rule? How does that work in that aspect? And, or what's the distance between that? Whereas for Mantic, it was, here's a very basic rule set. Yes, there are nuances with things that you might need clarification, but luckily it was really useful. I remember at Clash, I went, well, actually, I know the guy or the person from another tournament. Can you just clarify what this rule means? And I remember actually asking, I think new players should do this all the time. After every game, if I lost, which happened quite a lot, I would say, any advice? What would you do differently? And that's why, for example, Chris Lynch was great. He went, by the way, when you deploy, have you thought about doing it like this? Or someone to say, by the way, have you thought about doing this? Because sometimes, as an early player, as a new player, I would forget some of my rules. So I learned now to, when I had my army list printed, I'd highlight the rules of like the special rules, because I would forget, for example, my Naiads, I forgot they had life leech when things were frozen nearby. I forgot they had all of this. And I was like, oh God. And actually highlighting them just reminded me of those rules, which I thought was really good. So I think it's definitely a much more accessible, and the rules, you don't need a giant book. Yes, you can look at it if you need to, but most of the rules are simple enough that you will be able to find it quite quickly as well.
I'm curious, as you sort of came into the game at the tail end of what we sort of deem 3.5, right? The edition, last edition before all the new hotness that is forth. Was there anything in your first few tournaments from the army building or rules perspective or anything you were like, I hope they change this, or I hope they update this in fourth, or was there anything that you felt in 3.5, from a new player's perspective that felt a little wonky or a little off to you, or anything rise to the surface?
I think I did find the army list building a bit complicated. Like without companion, I didn't know how unlocks worked. I didn't know what was happening. So if companion wasn't there, I think it would have been if I had to do it manually, which I know some people have had done for fourth in the before the companion kicked out, it would take a long time. So that was one thing I really struggled with. So I'd say that was the thing. Oh, that would be great. From a new player, I think I didn't know how to deal with, say, spam lists or things like that. And I didn't really enjoy playing against, an example, someone had like 3 dragons. And I was like, well, my army's going to die very quickly because I haven't got anything to deal with that. So those were things that I struggled with. But apart from that, from everything else, I was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. I just need to learn how that works, basically, and the nuances of it, because that was it. The angles is still something that, again, I think it's just going to take a long time to master, really.
And I think that's a common refrain we hear from newer players, right? The skew list that we come up against sometimes, where whether or not there's spam, usually there's a spam element, right? There's one unit that's undercosted or just a little too good, and they just find a way to just, 3 dragons are an interesting problem, for newer players. Jeremy, it reminds me of our days in second edition when we didn't disorder dragons and flying monsters, and they would punch you in the face. You'd punch them back, they would fly over you and hit something. There's certainly mechanics in the game that do take a little bit more time for new players to overcome. I really want to get your sense too, coming out of 3.5, going into 4th. Are you a heavy social media user? Are you on the Facebook? And because look, I'm of the I don't really use social media at all, except for the fact I have to use Facebook for the podcast because that's what the community has chosen. So give me a sense of you. Like, were you on there? Are you going on all the forums and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff?
So I'm on Facebook Fanatics, and I'm on a Northern Alliance group page. The Northern Alliance one was really great in 3.5. Just like I would showcase what I've been painting, or rules wise, how does this work? With Fanatics, I haven't posted anything. I've just seen, and I do say in my group chat, I go, people don't seem very happy about 4th, because usually every day there's someone or something going, oh, have you seen this? I hate this. I hate this. I'm like, is it bad? Is it that bad?
For those people, I want to ask them, like, what do you like? And why are you playing something that you absolutely hate? You hit on something that's super interesting, though. Fanatics is an outlier for the rest of the Facebook community pages for Kings of War related content. Like the army pages are great. You go to those pages and you have a bunch of people that are heavily invested in that army. They're passionate. They love sharing their hobby. I love those pages. Countercharge group page is fine too, right? Like it's a pretty healthy discussion, but it's pretty positive. Fanatics, I think it just kind of, when you get to a point where you've got 13, 14,000 people, you're going to have that small percentage that are just vocal and super, I don't want to say nasty. I think a lot of what we're seeing is just, they're a little negative. Maybe it's just because they just don't like change. And, it's human nature. We don't like change. But so I'm always curious what a new player's perspective is on Fanatics in particular, because, in the past we've had people go, we want nothing to do with the game because this is the image you're putting out. And it's like, well, I get why you would come to that conclusion, but that is not a reflection of the actual community. That's a reflection of 5% of the community. It's frustrating, and I don't know what the answer is. I think all groups of that size, you have that ability to, especially groups that have little moderation. The anonymity of the internet kind of just sometimes draws the worst out of people. But I would say, if you think it's bad now, I think it's come a long ways, and I think it's actually better than it has been in the past. There's been times where I wouldn't want to use it just because it was a lot of trolls and stuff, and I think a lot of that's, the community has matured a little bit. I mean, we've been at this for over 10 years, and, fingers crossed. But give us a sense of, you're playing 3.5, and you hear on the winds that there's this 4th edition. Like, give us a sense of how that news got to you.
So I think it was through my local group, because I think Chris and Mike were playtesting 4th. So through them, they're like, oh, by the way, 4th is coming. We're like, okay, how different is it going to be? And obviously people couldn't say much until I think probably close to Clash, when more things, after Clash UK, things started to be released of this is happening. And when they said it's been released, I think the first thing I said to them was, am I going to have to learn a brand new game? I've spent a long time just trying to figure out how things work. But from what they said, and actually from what's been released, and even from seeing all the rules, I went, actually, it's nowhere near loads different than I thought it was going to be. Again, it's little tweaks and little refinements. I think the only thing I was a bit confused by, or I didn't really get, was the nerve thing of going to a single nerve value. Because I went, I kind of like the fact that there was fearless and things, and there still is fearless, I know, but that was the one thing I think I went, I don't understand why that's happened.
Yeah.
And then I saw the rules for Northern Alliance, and I went, things have gone. Things I liked, like Chilling Presence and Tundra Fighters, which I really liked, because I used a lot of that in 3.5. I enjoyed that, and it's kind of it's lost what it used to have. So I think of a new way of playing now.
Have you gone through this before in other game systems, whether it was Horus Heresy, where you're going through an edition change?
Not while we were playing. So Horus Heresy actually did a new one recently, and we were going to get back into it, and then people started telling me what the rules were, and I went, "This is too complicated." It was already
it's basically it's the current rules of 40K, right? As opposed to what it was before, like 7th edition or something.
Do you know what? I don't even know, because I'm so confused half the time about what the rules are. Because I remember before it was complicated, and then they've changed some things, so now it's basically learning a new way of doing things and getting things. So we haven't even started doing that. So that's the only game where the rules have changed that I kind of knew about going. I think with the other games, we stopped playing 40K and everything before major rule changes happened as well. So yeah, this is the first one I've actually experienced a live change.
I've been a long time Warhammer Fantasy Battle player, and those edition changes, I use the term revolution rather than evolution, right? Warhammer, if we went from 7th to 8th, that is essentially a new game. Yes, there's some similarity in the sense that they're playing with D6s, but the way combat works is really different. And I think Mantic has done a pretty good job. You look at all the editions. I mean, 1st edition and 2nd edition, that was pretty revolutionary, because 1st edition was hey, let's get it out there and see how it's received. All right. Oh, now we need to make it into a proper game, right? But then, we really just tweaked the rules from second to third to 3.5. And so fourth is still an evolution. And the changes might be a little bit more significant than maybe we saw from second to third to 3.5. But it's still Kings of War at its core. It still feels the same. I mean, Jeremy, I don't know, you want to jump in here, but like to me, it's like, okay, the big change is sticky combat. We do only have one nerve value, so that does change the way wavering as a mechanic and the way fearless works. But the movements are a little bit more aggressive, like because now you have the pivots that you wouldn't have before. So I don't know, Jeremy, what are your thoughts? I think they did a pretty good job of trying to keep the core the same and just add the tweaks to make it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone, or one of the sort of, marketing bylines or whatever you want to say was, you play Kings of War, it's a new edition, but it still feels like Kings of War. And I think that's true. I think as far as having played a bunch of games with there is a lot of differences around the core rules, but to me, it still feels like playing Kings of War. I don't feel like I'm playing like a completely different game. And I think it makes sense that the majority of playtest time was spent around updating the core rules. That's why I think when you look at the core rules, outside of a few of these weird case, like we've seen a little bit online, the teleporting chariot, or a couple of these small sort of rules as written versus rules as intention, which again, I'm going to get on my soapbox and throw my 2 cents to, I hope Mantic does the first FAQ here before Adepticon.
Soon.
I
no Blast E3 on Host Shadow Beasts. That's bullcrap.
Yeah. But whereas I think some of the balance stuff, and the thing is, because balance was figured out as a formula, right? If something is unbalanced, that means that look at the weight that something has in the formula. No longer are they balancing things separately, right? If something feels unbalanced, I think that comes down to the formula used to calculate its points is valuing something that the player base feels is being either overvalued or undervalued. But what that tells me is they have those levers to change, right? Where it's like, oh, this unit gets this special rule, which makes it this cost. Now, is that special rule we feel is maybe not worth that much points? Okay, so now let's dial down in the formula that whatever extra points that special rule costs. So, yeah, so I think the core rules feel great, outside of a couple questions that need to be answered. And I think this concept of the basic lists and the full lists, we talked about it a little bit on the scrying gems. I think Britton had a great take on this, which is almost a necessity. There was no way they could have designed a new 4th edition core rules and also done complete army lists for every single army in the game. There was just no time to do that in the development cycle, whether or not they wanted to, not wanted to, philosophy, marketing, all of that stuff aside. I just think there was no way. So if we want armies to have that more robust Mantic 2.0 feeling, and you brought this up too, Rob, when we were talking about it, when they updated those armies, like when they updated the new Northern Alliance with all those Tundra fighters and all those cool special rules, that was the only thing they were working on, So they had the manpower to think that they could come up with a Mantic 2.0 feel for every single army in the game, plus all new core rules. That's asking a lot. So again, this new sort of system of basic armies and complete armies, I want to let it play out for a year and see, are we going to get the books on regular? Are they going to get delayed? Are they not going to get delayed? How are the new armies going to feel in version, volume 2? I forget what it's going to be called, but the next
Arrogance,
the next group. But I think they've had to look at where they were. What do we have power over? But again, it comes back to me. They have Alessio. They have decided to take more control and more ownership of their game, which to me can only, maybe it's there's some growing pains in that, but I still think long term, for the overall health of Kings of War and health of Mantic, this game, Mantic has to have ownership. They have to have I don't know, what do you think, Rob? They have to have a stake in the game.
Yeah. Well, it's an investment by them, right? So I'm sure this is going to mean, if anything, that first book coming out, an all digital Salamander army, a whole brand new army from scratch, filling out the Trident Realms and Halflings. I mean, I'm excited about the next book, right? Because I expect that pattern to be continued, right? There should be 4 armies. You got a lead army. That's going to be a complete redesign. And at the, you'll probably have a fully digital army. Then you'll have a couple armies that are kind of almost there, and they're going to give them what they need to just get them over the hump. So, Alex, I'm really curious too. You obviously had some inside players there that were able to alert you to 4th edition looming out there. But how did you follow the information leak that was come out? Like, how did you find the marketing approach? And where were you? I mean, their blog was good, but like, just give us a sense of how you were getting that information.
Yeah, it was mainly that blog update of this is how movement's going to work now. This is how combat's going to work, and that was a nice way to dip into kind of each section, not have everything thrown at you, and you become overwhelmed with so many rules and so many things. Like, okay, we're going to teach you about this today. Obviously, I wanted to learn more. As soon as I read that first one, I was like, well, what happens in movement? What happens in this? What happens here? Podcasts were a big one because I think I mentioned to you while I was driving, it's a great way to listen to a podcast, listen to yourselves, listen to a few other ones who are doing, say, for example, the rules. This is how the movement phase works in a bit more detail. This is how combat now works. Like, I think there was one about, and they did army list reviews, and that's how I learned about, the Northern Alliance changes. So podcasts I found really easy to disseminate all of that information. I think was really good because I could do it while doing something else. But I think it was a nice way that it was slowly done. I think if everything was at the same time, I would have gone, where do I start? What do I listen to first? Where do I go? And then actually, by the time the rules came out and Companion was updated, I then went online and went, yep, I've read this already. Yep, cool. Oh, okay, this is the bit I found very complicated, e.g. movement and pivots and charges and how do things work? It was the technical things, which again, it's those things that still take you time to master. This angle means this sticky combat is going to change this way. I thought the one thing I found amusing was if you withdraw, but through your own stuff, you could conga line it and go all the way through, a mass amount of units, which I found funny. But, I'm curious to see if that actually ever happens once, where you just get one unit going through loads of units by the end of it.
If you set it up that way, I'm sure it occurred. Now, the good news is that you're wavered when you come out the back end, right?
Yeah.
So, it does limit some of the abuse. Was there anything in the rules that were changed? You're like, oh, I really like this change.
I liked the fact it was combat, and the fact that you don't have to go. I think you don't have to go the shortest route. You just go like, I can kind of pivot.
You just decide the route now, as opposed to rules and restrictions. You just, if you want to try to avoid the wall, you got the pivots and the distance to get there, just make it happen. Which I think is good.
That, and I also liked that. And again, I haven't tried it. The more pivots in some of the other movements when you are moving and reforming and doing some movements of just the extra bit of movement of just turning and still moving and pivoting. I think I really liked that. I think I like the fact that it's very hard to die from shooting now, because as an army that I don't tend to have that much shooting, or if it is, it's going to be very short range, and then I'm going to charge into combat anyway, because ice elementals will shoot and then surge in. So I'm glad that I can't be wiped off the board as easily. I know it still can happen, but not as easily as before.
Yeah, shooting is definitely still a thing. You just won't probably lose units on the first turn. But if somebody still wants to bring a gun line, there is the potential. It's just also the potential of your combat army to get into combat with them. Because once you get into combat with them, it should swing in your favor. As someone that has played a lot of GW games, I am curious. GW has a very different marketing approach, right? So, like in 40K, we have codexes, or or some kind of army book, and you've got like maybe a 4 or 5 year cycle, probably closer to 4-year cycle for new rules. And historically, Mantic has taken an approach of, all right, we're going to update the rules once a year, right? In this Clash of Kings pack, we might have a couple army updates during the year. And we might get a new, this is 2025, and we started in 2015 with 2nd edition. And in that span, this is the 3rd edition, right? So, like, it's pretty long in between editions. That's kind of where we were. I don't know in terms of what the plan is, what's their schedule for 5th edition, but like, army books aren't a thing. like GW, but we are going to be getting 6-month releases of here's a supplement that's going to cover more of a narrative arc, and here's 4 army lists. I am curious about it is an increased change. It is an increased pace of change with Kings of War now. What are your thoughts as a new player? Are you worried about that, or is it still not to the speed where you're overly concerned?
I'm not overly concerned. The thing I would probably ask or try and question is how much will each army change with those rules? Is it going to change loads? For example, is Northern Alliance going to get their Tundra fighters and Chilling Prey? Is that going to come back for them? And it's going to be great. That's what I'm vying for because I really love those. Or is it just going to be little tweaks and little rule changes? Which, if that's the case, then we know, even from playtests, they go, we need to change that. We need to play that. Because my I think concern as a new player is some armies are fully fleshed out, brand new now. Are they going to have an advantage over ones that, the book people who are in the last book who aren't going to come out for a couple of years? Is it going to take a long time before they see their fully fleshed out army? And by that time, is 5th edition just around the corner? And how long do you have those rules for before you go, actually, we're now into another rule set?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you just do the math, I mean, they've got 5 more books to do, 6 months a pop. That's 2.5 years. So theoretically, I don't see them in the next 2.5, 3 years coming out with a 5th edition. They should have all the armies updated. And that's what Jeremy said. Hey, proof's in the pudding, right? Actually show us. But to that end, I am curious. Something you brought up there, which is probably a central point of contention for some people, is that we do have armies that are in the new book. They're all fleshed out. They have all their units, right? They've got, maybe you could argue, more interesting special rules, but they also have more commands. They may even have a special spell, right? And so even if you take the competitive stuff aside, it's just maybe they're more interesting. And I just wonder, from your perspective, I mean, you don't know when Northern Alliance is coming. So is it, if it's not in the next book and it's, at some point it will come, but I mean, does it incentivize you to pick up another army that's in one of the current books that are coming out and just maybe put Northern Alliance on the back burner until they do come with their new list? Or you're just, you're ready to play Northern Alliance come hell or high water, and we're going to just keep pumping ice elementals down people's throat?
I think if I was one of the top players of Northern Alliance and the UK, and I've gone, right, I've mastered Northern Alliance, I would probably go towards, let's try a new army because they are fleshed out. But I think it probably gives you more time to figure out how does this army work generally. And the special rules are probably going to just tweak things slightly, but at least I'll know now, how does this army work in 4th edition? What does work? What doesn't work? What's still good? What's terrible now? Like, for example, Frostclaw Riders probably not going to pay for shooting with them just because it's very expensive. And often that shooting doesn't do much. And it's usually in combat where they excel. And actually now they're cheaper without, than before. So it's interesting because when I looked at the list for 4th, some things are a lot cheaper. And I'm like, oh, actually, I might take some more of those. And some things are more expensive, like, the heroes, they've all gone up. But I looked at my list for 3.5 and I go, I can't take this list anymore because I've got too many. I think I had 2 units of ice elementals and a cavern dweller and like a giant or something. I can't have all of that really in a feasible points unless I have really cheap and potentially not great core units. So it's still, I think, mastering that first. And if I can master that, then I might be tempted to delve into another army. Or if I play an army and I go, well, actually, that's really cool, I kind of want to play with them, then I might pick that one up as well.
Any of the new armies models may lure you that way too?
Do you know, it's that class thing of, sometimes I love the way models look, but I'm not competent enough as a painter and as a hobbyist to make them look good. And so while someone might have some amazing models, go, oh, I'd love to have those, me trying to paint them makes it look, oh, this is nowhere near as nice as that person. So there are models like, I think Salamander's models look great. I think, again, I still love the Northern Alliance models because actually I've got a fully Mantic army. because a lot of my friends have got other ones from either GW or from other printers. But actually, I really liked all of the Mantic 3D models. Again, Cavern Dweller, Giant, Ice Elementals. I wish they had different poses. The only thing for Ice Elementals and Trolls, I wish they had a few more different poses. But I think the models are great.
You know, Jeremy, what I'm hearing when he talked about the paint shops, I think he's saying that Glenn Waring does too good of a job that it's disincentivizing him.
Oh yeah, his new Zerkali look amazing. So it's nice to see.
I'm in the same boat, Alex. It is sometimes disconcerting. You're like, oh wow. I mean, I do get inspired by the really cool stuff that I've seen come out, but the other thing is, you know, it is like, wow, you really killed it with this army. It looks so amazing, and I'm always like, can I get it to that level? You know, it's a slippery slope, right? It's a slippery slope.
And all of the Southern players, they're all great, and loads of them are amazing painters. Like, I look at their army and I go, that is an amazing paint job. Like, hats off, and is envious of how good they are. And they've got thousands of models, and you know, I think a few of them are actual painters as part of their job. They're professional, you know, hobbyists. But it was, I mean, all the armies I played against, they've all been beautiful models, Mantic or non-Mantic. It's always a joy to go, this is such a... Danny Graves, I'll shout out, he does some amazing hobbies. He had, it was a woodland, what's the woodland one? Force of Nature, I think it was, Tree Folk, and he had one which like a Little Bear's Picnic, and it's just fun models. That's what we like. And Steve Hildrew has some fun models as well. I think I just like playing against people who've hobbied something that looks so fun.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned a little bit about army building. What do you think of the new, as something that was a little, you know, confusing in 3.5 when you first came to it? What are your thoughts on the new style of the different types of units and the new army building in 4th?
I think it's much simpler by going, you have a core, you have auxiliary, you have specialist, you have support. I think that makes it much simpler. I think it took a little bit of me to go, okay, so I have 2 of that, which releases, you know, 1 of those and that. So I think it's much simpler from a new player perspective to understand how do you form an army. It kind of reminds me of the GW of, you know, HQ and 2 troops, warlord. You know, you have a warlord and you have 2 core, and that's kind of your base, and then you build from that if you want to. I think only for me, I think I've got to figure out how do I build a list now differently, because I can't have all the things I want to. Like half-elf berserkers, I used to take them quite a lot. Now I can't have them as like a core unless I take a certain warlord, but then I'm not really ever going to take that warlord because I would take a different warlord. So I think for me, it's trying to figure out how do I construct a new list a bit different from what I'm used to playing, which I don't think there's anything wrong with, because I just have to play with the models I do have. I just don't happen to use them that often.
So have you run into that? Have you run into your 3.5 army needs some tweaking? Are you going to add some new stuff to make it playable in 4th? What are your thoughts in general as a new player around a change in rule set, sort of needing to add some new stuff, or look at an army in a different way? Is that exciting because you get to try new things? Is it frustrating, or sort of where do you fall along on that?
I think luckily I've got the models, so I don't have to buy any other models, which is great. I've already got a load of core, just didn't happen to use them. So I've got a load of tribesmen, I've got a load of pack hunters, which is great, so I can use them. I think I haven't used them. I didn't use them in 3.5 because I just didn't figure out how to use them properly, and I think I used them once or twice, and they died horrifically. So I went down more that specialist route. I think I'm sad that I can't have the army list that I would in 3.5. I've got to not use. I think in the last tournament I had like 2 units of pack hunters, not pack hunters, so 2 units of ice elementals, half elf berserkers, and some frost claw, two regiments of frost claws. And I'm like, I can't have all of that. I've got to now have much more core to then unlock that, which I think there's nothing wrong with that. It just means I'm going to have to think a little bit differently on how am I going to build this list. And I'm probably going to have to play around quite a lot with going, okay, this is a combination that works, and this is where its pitfalls are. Like, I still think shooting, there's not as much shooting in Northern Alliance compared to other ones, but there's more of that kind of broad range of you can have a bit of everything. So I'm curious to see how list building changes, and is it going to be? Am I going to be more frustrated trying to build it, or am I going to be like, okay, actually, it's easy to build, but I still need to figure out how to play with these units.
It's going to be interesting, Alex, to hear you in 6 months, because I think 4th edition is a little bit different of a game in terms of what type of army you want, right? Obviously, construction is part of that as well, but the way you play the game is slightly different. And I think I have found that I want different things in my army, right? And obviously, I don't have a choice in some of it because some of the units I used to have are gone, right? Or maybe they used to become as hordes and they don't become as hordes. So it's going to be fun too that I'm having a lot of fun exploring army construction and building lists with the eye of do they work in 4th, rather than, trying to keep, I mean, my 3.5 lists are a starting point, but I'm obviously looking towards, okay, what do I need in 4th? What makes a winning army? And some of it could be the same thing, the number of scoring units, the unit strength, and that kind of thing. But with overall, it feels like there's a reduction in crushing strength or lethality of some of the combat troops. The fact you could only have 2 units, even though, Jeremy, 2 units in a facing, the ogres that I've been playing don't have a problem still taking me out. So I don't want to hear anything that you still can't alpha strike, because you get hit by some siege breakers and some warriors, they're still going to smash your face, even if you're having a defense 6 mincer mob. So.
For sure.
I think I found with my sort of 3.5 list, I was like, okay, I know how this works, because I would go Chilling Presence and Tundra Fighters, everything would be vicious, and I would get loads of sort of bonuses there. But because that's all kind of gone, it's really having to rethink what is the tactic that I enjoy playing, and what's going to be the new one, because that's kind of all gone. And the Frozen isn't really as good as I think it used to be, because it was quite nice running through Chilling Presence, loads of things are slowed down. I can now be annoying, or I can shoot you and throw, like I remember Serakina would freeze some stuff, and it meant that when I was playing ogres, I was like, haha, you can't get me because you're a little bit slower. So I enjoyed that, but now I can't do that as much. So now I need to go, okay, it's probably going to be more chunky with the pack hunters and the tribesmen. That's going to be probably a big chunk of my core. And then it's probably going to be some fast moving stuff. But it was interesting with the ice elementals, because when I listened to the podcast and they were like, oh, they're shoot 4 and melee 5, I went, oh, that must be a mistake. That must be wrong, because if they don't move, they're going to shoot on 3s. That's silly. I went, no, that's right. So it's interesting how they've changed that to more shooting, but then combat, they're not going to be as good, which I'm guessing is to deter people from shoot, surge in, and combat, which is what every Northern Alliance player tended to do with those lovely ice elementals.
Yeah, I think part of it too is just trying to differentiate large infantry so that they all feel a little bit different. And I think in the case of ice elementals, the fact that they did kind of nerf the combat ability actually means they're reasonably costed, right? As opposed to other units that have the ability to shoot, and those units that are still in the game that shoot pretty well and fight pretty well are pretty cost prohibitive. So Jeremy mentioned it before. I mean, I'm excited to see that first errata. I'm also excited to see that first balance tweak where they go into the formula and maybe they affect some weights for I think the one area that probably needs it the most are the ones that are multifaceted, combat and, a combo, a jack of all trades, right?
It seemed like the characters that have a combination of rules that thus shoots their price up. It's unclear whether or not it's worth it, right? But again, I always use that one Clash of Kings. I forget what it was, but it was one where people were teleporting Lady Alona behind your lines, and everyone was like, it was happening on Universal Battle for like 2 weeks as like a new hotness, and then people stopped doing it. So I still think that you don't know what's going to be good fully until all the lists are released to the wider community. I want to see, what are people playing in 6 months? Or what are people playing once the second book comes out? Then we'll see what's truly undercosted, overcosted, because it is very much a different game too. Maybe things, once we're playing the game and playing the new scenarios and playing the new rules, maybe my 3rd edition mind sees something that I think is under or overvalued, but maybe in 4th edition it's right, because I'm thinking through the lens of a 3rd edition mind. And I think the game is just different enough that it's going to take that new perspective maybe to look at it.
Yeah. I think one of the keys that we're still sorting through is that the difference between buying 2 regiments to unlock 2 units versus 1 horde, which only unlocks 1 but buys unit strength at a more efficient price. Like that's the $1 million question, and it depends on which army you have. And I've tried both ways, where you go heavy horde or you go heavy regiment. I don't know. I think we're on a quest, or we're on a journey where there's going to be a lot of vanilla armies out there as we're trying to like try things, and we're just trying to like, let's go back to formula, as Jeremy would say. Go to formula, back to formula.
Yeah, we're going to have a little bit of us, everyone in the beat laboratory, a la Step Brothers, coming up with concoctions and trying new things, throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, what doesn't stick. I'm really curious, as we get some more events, what's going to rise to the surface. We have some coming up soon, and then we have Adepta Clash here in March, so it should be interesting over the next 3 to 6 months to see sort of what rises to the surface on what people are taking. But
yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of emergent tactics that come out of this.
Definitely.
For me, Alex, this is kind of the most exciting time of a game, is when you go into a new edition and everything's back to formula. It's like, okay, everybody's at the same starting page. So yes, Chris Lynch is an amazing player. His experience level with 4th edition is not maybe that much more than you, Alex. So this is the time to get him.
Do you know what? UK number 1. That's the plan.
And we've said it all the time, right? This is how you get good at a game. Play people who kick the crap out of you. And then they'll start kicking the crap out of you a little less. And then when you go and play like your average person, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm playing a completely different game here now, because you have that such hard competition. Is good to practice against.
Well, it's interesting because I've played UK number 1, but I've also played like people in the Masters list, and I have beaten them. And that just shows that I remember one person I played, really great player, and it just happened, just because there was a turn 7, that's why I won, because the objective, I think Hrim managed to chase down a greater air elemental or something like that. So I like the fact that even if, the players can vary in experience and, level, but actually sometimes if those dice roll the right way, the game can completely change. And it's always that turn 7. So is there going to be a turn 7? And you're like, oh, thank you, there's not. Or yes, there is. I've got a chance to redeem this and potentially get it to a draw or a win, which I think is quite fun as well.
Yes, the turn 7 is the key to Kings of War. And I'm glad they kept it, right? Because, like, to me, that is the number one thing that makes Kings of War unique, because if you know the end state of the game, you can sort of back your way into, okay, well, what am I going to do on turns 1, 2, and 3? Well, when you hit turn 5 and 6, Jeremy and Alex, you got to think about, am I playing for turn 6 or am I playing for turn 7? And those are not always the same. Those don't always require the same behavior or the same movement and the same setup. And it's always fun. It's almost like that element of fog of war that is missing in a lot of other games.
No, you need it. I mean, for every game that you lose, if there's a turn 7, there's games that you win if there's a turn 7. So I think in the end that equals itself out, and it leads for less deterministic play. Sometimes when you're playing against a better player, you need a little luck, right? And that's why we roll dice. If we didn't roll dice, we'd be playing chess, right? So I know, like, for me to beat a certain level of player, I got to play right, and I need to get a little lucky. But that's what keeps me playing, right? If there wasn't that element of luck, or and I'm curious as what you think, Alex, as a newer player playing these really great players, you need a little bit of that to keep the new player in. Because if a new player always is there's nothing I could ever do, I'm always going to lose. Where having that element of chance, I think, is what adds the spice to these type of games.
100%. I remember the last tournament I played in November was Warfare, and I remember the first game I had loads of unlucky, like it was double ones. I kept, double ones were happening at the worst time. I was like, this is not fun. And in the second game, like I was getting 5s and 6s for a lot of things, and my opponent, I think it was Steve Hildrew, he was like, what is this? I was like, I'm sorry, a lot of your army's dead. But it ended up being...
You're never going to hear us complain about you smashing Steve Hildrew. No one will ever complain about that.
It ended up being a draw, but the first few turns, his goblins were just being destroyed by just lucky dice and things like that. And then the third game was again just it's those kind of dice we go, oh, this is exciting. But then I know especially at Clash when it was 6 games, which was a long day. I think on my last day it was just like a loss after a loss after a loss. And I think as a new player, you can feel a bit demoralized because you're like, oh, I suck. This is terrible. And obviously you're going down the rankings and you're like, I can't even get back up. But I think it is that luck that makes it fun. And it goes back to your opponent. If your opponent's fun and they're up for a good fun game, they're not being that rule pernickety person. And they're like, by the way, you've got a flank open. Or if you go, is my flank open here? And they go, no, great, cool. We agree that. I like that in Kings of War because you wouldn't get that in other games. I wouldn't ask my opponent, say in a Horus Heresy, Lord of the Rings game, oh yeah, I'm out here, aren't I? They wouldn't go, yeah, you are. Yeah, they would probably keep quite quiet because they want to win. Whereas Kings of War, I found, is quite a nice community game where actually fun stuff happens. At Clash, what was it? I think my ice elementals were on 30 or 40 wounds, and they double wonned it, so they were devastated, but they were staying there, and they weren't going to move. So I think those fun things just happen, which just makes it funny to play. Go, look what's happening here. This person's not going to die.
What's been the reaction from 4th edition in your local scene? I know you have some playtesters there, but just the people you're talking to, how has it been received?
Do you know what? I haven't found many sort of negatives about it. And even we're part of, along with my sort of very local group, we're part of a Facebook chat with all of the players basically in the South. And a lot of them, they're all sort of up for it. It sounds great. And usually the conversation goes, have you seen what someone's posted on Fanatics? Oh, they're not happy about it, are they? And we're kind of lightheartedly sort of laughing along to that because I think all of us know we're like, it's a new version. There's going to be little things that need to be happening, need to be changed, but actually we need to play some games. I haven't had a game of 4th yet, so I don't know how that's going to be. And I'm sure Chris, Mike, Andy, or Matthew will say, yeah, let's have a game. Let's see how these rules all work. But I think until you play it for a few months, you don't know what the game's like. So I think I'm up for exploring it, and so is the rest of the group as well.
Yeah. Obviously, we read the rules, and I thought I understood the rules, but even now I'm learning stuff. Well, no, you don't actually have that right, because the rules are very specific. But I almost wish I was you, Alex, because you kind of came to the game just 6 months ago. You don't have that institutional knowledge that's going to be a baggage on you.
It's like internal bias.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, they're like, no, you're not doing this right. I'm like, oh my God, you're right, because you have a fresh set of eyes. You can oh, okay, I can read the rules. It makes sense. So,
yeah, I think often when you're reading new rules of a new edition, you read it through the lens of how it was in the old edition. You have, well, I know how this rule used to be, so I'm going to interpret this new rule through the lens of how it used to be. But it's not how it used to be. It's new. Right. So sometimes trying to divulge yourself of flush out the filament in your mind of the previous edition.
3D printing metaphor?
I got 3D printing on the brain as I got one for Christmas. So you got to flush out the filament of the old.
Oh my gosh.
And think about what you're doing new. So having that clean perspective, you don't know what you don't know. Right. So approaching a new edition with as clean and fresh a mind as possible, it's going to lead to less headaches, I think.
With a lot of, like you said before, a lot of games, if there's change, people are not necessarily going to like it. Another game I've played is Magic the Gathering, which it's been very consistent with its rules over the years, but every so often they'll tweak something and there will be huge uproar, people hating it, but then people love it. And then it settles down and people just accept it as the new norm. And I think that's probably what's going to happen here. It's going to be and we've seen that. Oh, this is terrible. Why is this happening? What's happening here? Okay, I've calmed down. My emotional response is kind of, whew, okay, I'm now used to it. And actually, I'm happy with it because the change has happened and I now understand the rationale behind it as well, which I think is good.
What would be your words of encouragement to somebody that hasn't even played Kings of War? What's your sales pitch to that player?
Simply try it. If you want to have a couple of hours spending games with your friends and having some fun and going back into that childhood fantasy of just creatures, humans, all sorts, fighting and killing each other with a bit of luck, and you don't really know what's going to happen, then Kings of War is the way for you. And if you don't have any models, just my friends very kindly, when I first started, said, "Oh yeah, borrow these and play test with these. If you like it, then we'll buy you some, or we'll get you some." So I think words of encouragement: just try it. If you don't like it, you can always stop. But I bet they'll like it, and I bet they'll keep playing.
There's a game for everybody and everybody for a game. And the reality is, there's a lot of games out there. I hope you give it a chance. But if you legitimately don't like it for whatever reason, it might just be you don't like Ranks and Flanks. No harm in that. There's plenty of other games. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not out there trying new stuff, right? And Kings of War 4th Edition is a great opportunity to get in the game when it's kind of been back to formula, as Jeremy says. So you got any big plans for tournaments coming up, Alex? Anything new on the horizon?
There's a few that have popped up now that 4th is there. I haven't signed up, but there's a great one. A guy called Todd runs War of the Roses, and that's really great. I want to sign up for that. It's not until October. And there's a few, I think, in sort of March and June already. But I think I need to get some practice games in first. But I don't think it's going to be much more complicated. And if it is, I'll just lose those. I'll just lose those 4 games and baptism by fire and learn this is how the game works now. And go, oh yeah, sorry.
You just need to call. Yeah, you just need to contact. Shoot a DM to Chris Lynch and say, "Chris, you and me, first round, grudging you. Let's. What's all this 4th about? Let's get on. Let's get it on." Yeah.
I still need to say to Chris. I keep saying to him, "How about I write you a list and see if you can win with that?" And it's going to try and be like the weirdest or worst list. And I want you to see if you can win with it. And I probably could.
He's a great player. He probably could. Back in the day, that was maybe my very favorite events. We would have these lists where everybody brought the worst army, but you didn't play it. Your opponent did. And so it was like you had an incentive to make the most garbage list you possibly could. But you know what? The really good players, they made it work.
It's giving items onto snow foxes. All of that random stuff, the most expensive items possible.
Well, Alex, we really appreciate you reaching out and giving us the time to chat about your experience with 3.5 and kind of your perspective on 4th. Because I think, Jeremy, this is one of the things we've been talking about, is that one of the pushes for 4th edition is to really grow the size of the community, right? Every edition change, you might lose some players, but the goal is that we gain more than we lose.
100%. It's always good to take a pulse, right, of players at all different levels, and to try to create a game that has like a pathway for new players to enter and a place for them to grow and go to, so that there is that sort of ecosystem and player base for both skilled players but also new players. Trying to identify that space where everyone can have fun, I think is great. Because in the end, if the game devolves into the last 3 or 4 tryhards and that's all who's left, we're not going to have a game anymore. So, but yeah, thanks a bunch for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, look forward to getting you back on in 6 months and seeing how your opinion has evolved. Hey, who knows? By then you're like, oh, I'm all a Salamanders player now, or you're on to the next hotness. Ophidians or whatever's coming out next, right? So, well, I think that's going to do us tonight. And until next time, keep countercharging.
Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time on Countercharge. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at counterchargepodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter at countercharge15, or by commenting on the Countercharge Kings of War podcast Facebook group. If you enjoy the show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Until next time, keep countercharging. Music is a composition of Kevin MacLeod and is licensed under Creative Commons.